feels heavy with anticipation, as if something invisible is already moving between us. And I want you to notice it. That subtle vibration, that silent current, that is the very thing I wish to speak about tonight. For there exists among certain souls a presence, a radiance, an aura that is not common to all humanity. It is the rare aura of the empath, the one who carries not only his own soul, but becomes often unwillingly the vessel for the unspoken sufferings of others. This is not sentimentality, nor is it weakness, though society often confuses it as such. It is, in truth, one of the deepest mysteries of the human psyche, one that touches the archetypal foundations of our existence. You see, when I speak of aura, I am not merely referring to a mystical glow, but to the psychic field, the invisible constellation of forces that surrounds every human being. Most people's aura is muted, blurred, a fog of impulses, desire, and half-conscious drives. But in some, the aura is unusually porous, unusually alive, almost transparent, like a clear vessel into which the collective unconscious pours itself. These individuals do not simply live within themselves. They live at the threshold where their soul touches the suffering and longing of others. They are the empath, though I did not use such a word in my time, for we spoke instead of the anima, the shadow, the projections that bind us to one another, yet the essence is the same. They are those whose psychic skin is thinner, whose boundaries are both fragile and sacred, and therefore they bear what others cannot see or name. But why is it so rare? Because to carry such an aura requires a wound, and not every human being has allowed their wound to become a doorway. Many are wounded, yes, but they seal it with bitterness, or they flee from it in endless distractions, or they project it outward, blaming others for their pain. Yet there are those who, often in childhood, have been wounded in such a way that their very defenses became gateways. Instead of closing themselves, they opened wider. Instead of hardening, they became permeable. The empath is not born simply from temperament, but from a sacred injury, one that reshaped their psychic constitution. And this injury, paradoxically, allows them to sense what is unspoken, to feel the tremors of another's unconscious, to detect the archetypal dramas unfolding behind a stranger's eyes. If you listen closely, you will see how this connects with the archetype of the wounded healer. The Greek physician Asclepius could heal because he himself had suffered. The shaman enters the underworld, is torn apart by spirits, and returns with the gift of healing precisely because of his wounds. Likewise, the empath's aura is radiant, not because they have avoided suffering, but because suffering has passed through them and transfigured them. Their aura is not a polished shield. It is more like stained glass, cracked by experience, yet illumined by a deeper light shining through those very cracks. It is this paradox that makes their presence so magnetic and so unsettling. They remind others unconsciously of both the beauty and the terror of being open. Now, I want you to consider how such an aura functions in everyday life. Have you ever noticed how some individuals enter a room and the atmosphere changes? not through words, not through gestures, but through a kind of silent contagion. People feel safer, or they feel strangely exposed, as though someone sees through their disguises. The empath often carries this effect without meaning to. They do not impose their aura. It emanates like heat from a flame, and yet, because of this, they are often misunderstood. Others may project upon them fantasies of saviorhood, or accuse them of weakness, or unconsciously burden them with emotional debris, as if sensing that here, at last, is someone who will carry it. The empath lives at the mercy of projections, because their aura attracts not only the light but also the shadows of those around them. It is crucial to understand this. The empath's aura is not a passive glow, but a dynamic field of psychic exchange. Within the depths of the unconscious, symbols are not silent. They move, they seek containers, they migrate from one soul to another. An angry father represses his rage, and it seeps into the empathic child. A fearful mother hides her despair, and the child feels it in dreams. Thus, the empath becomes the vessel of what is unspoken, sometimes even of what is forbidden. Their dreams often reveal this, filled with serpents, waters, strangers, or fires that are not their own. The dream images tell them, you are carrying more than belongs to you. And this is the hidden truth. The rare aura of the empath is both a gift and a danger. It opens them to the divine resonance of humanity, but it also threatens to drown them in currents, not their own. I remember many patients who embodied this quality. They came not with a complaint about themselves, but about the heaviness they felt around others, about inexplicable fatigue, about an inability to say no. And when I looked deeper, I saw the archetype of the mediator at work. They were unconsciously acting as bridges between the personal and the collective unconscious. They suffered because they did not yet know how to differentiate what was theirs from what was not. To be an empath, you must learn discernment. Otherwise, you are torn apart by forces larger than your own psyche. You must learn to recognize the difference between compassion and possession, between resonance and entanglement. Otherwise, the aura that shines so brightly becomes a net in which you are trapped. But let me not frighten you, for I also tell you that such a rare aura carries a profound potential. When the empath awakens to their own nature, when they recognize that their openness is not weakness, but archetypal power, they become healers, artists, dreamers, and visionaries who can lead others through the labyrinth of the psyche. They embody what I called individuation, the process by which one becomes whole, not just for themselves, but as a model for others. Their aura resonates because they have entered into communion with deeper layers of reality. They may not be religious in the conventional sense, but they are spiritual in essence because they feel the gods moving in the unconscious, the archetypes stirring in dreams, the hidden dramas echoing through the collective, and so they remind humanity of what it has forgotten, that we are bound not by logic alone, but by a web of unseen forces, by love, fear, longing, and miss, perhaps you are such a person, and perhaps that is why you are listening now, Perhaps you have carried burdens that were not yours, felt sorrows. You could not explain, sense truth that no one else acknowledged. If so, then hear me. You are not imagining it. You are not weak. You are participating in one of the oldest mysteries of human existence. The rare aura you carry is a manifestation of the archetype of the healer, the mediator, the bridge. But do not confuse it with martyrdom. You are not meant to drown in others' shadows, but to shine light upon them. You are not meant to erase yourself for the sake of the collective, but to individuate so that you can stand firm in the storm while still radiating your truth. And let us not forget, every aura has its shadow. The empath who forgets this becomes enslaved. They become addicted to rescuing, unable to tolerate the suffering of others, confusing their own worth with their ability to absorb pain. They may even become narcissistic, in reverse, defining themselves only by how much they give away. This is not individuation. This is possession by the archetype of the savior. The true path of the empath is more difficult. To hold the tension between openness and boundary, between compassion and autonomy, only then does the rare aura become not a wound bleeding endlessly, but a chalice filled with living water, capable of nourishing without emptying itself. So I ask you, as you listen, to reflect upon your own aura. Do you sense its permeability, its openness? Do you feel when another's sorrow enters your field? Do you notice how your dreams swell with images that are not entirely your own? If so, then consider it a summons, not a curse, not a weakness, but a call to consciousness. For the hidden truth is that the empath is the living proof that we are not isolated egos, but souls woven together in the vast tapestry of the unconscious. To carry this aura is to bear the evidence that humanity is one body, one dream, one shadow, and one light. The aura of the empath is not only rare, but also symbolic of the human soul's participation in mysteries far larger than itself. You must remember, what I call the unconscious is not merely a storage chamber of forgotten memories. It is a living field, a sea of images, symbols, and instincts that shape the very fabric of existence. To be empathic in the deepest sense is to stand with one foot in your personal life and the other in this collective sea. It is to hear whispers not only of the neighbor's unspoken grief, but of the archetypes themselves, the mother, the lover, the warrior, the child, the shadow, the divine. These primordial forms are like constellations, and the empath feels their pull more strongly than others because their psychic sky is unusually clear. The shadow especially plays a central role here. Most people repress their shadow, the anger, the envy, the impulses that do not fit the polished mask they show the world. They push it down, and so it lives in darkness. But the empath often finds themselves feeling the shadows of others as if they were their own. They walk into a room and sense the hostility unspoken, the fear unacknowledged, the despair cloaked beneath a smile. They may even confuse it, believing it is their own emotion, when in fact they are carrying a fragment of another's hidden life. Do you see the burden? Their aura is a mirror, but a mirror that reflects not only the conscious but the unconscious. not only what is visible, but also what is buried. And yet, this very sensitivity is also a secret doorway, for when you can feel the shadow, you are already in dialogue with the unconscious. You are already participating in individuation, even if unconsciously. The empath is often drawn into relationships where they play the role of healer or confessor. This is no accident. The unconscious arranges such encounters, for the archetype of the healer seeks expression, and the empath is the vessel through which it flows. But beware, this is where the danger lies. For if the empath does not recognize that what they feel is not always their own, they will drown in borrowed sorrows, chained to wounds that do not belong to them. They will lose themselves, and their aura, once radiant, will dim with exhaustion. Therefore, the task of the empath is to enter into a sacred discernment, to learn to ask in every encounter, is this mine or is this yours? To learn to dream not only for themselves, but to see when a dream is carrying the message of the collective. Dreams of floods, wars, serpents, or burning houses often belong not to the individual alone, but to the culture, to the society, to humanity's shared unconscious. The empath becomes a seismograph, detecting tremors before others notice them. And so, in times of crisis, they often sense the breakdown before it erupts. They feel the anxiety in the air before the event arrives. They are, in a sense, prophets, not in the religious sense of predicting the future, but in the psychological sense of embodying humanity's next awareness before the collective consciousness catches up. The anima and animus also weave themselves into this mystery. The anima is the feminine soul image in a man, the animus, the masculine in a woman. But in the empath, these figures often appear with unusual intensity. The aura of the empath is charged with this energy because they are already in contact with the other within. Their openness to others is mirrored by their openness to their own inner contrasexual figure. They may dream of mysterious women guiding them, or stern men instructing them, or they may feel drawn magnetically to partners who embody these figures. This is not random. The empath's aura is alive with archetypal dialogue. Their relationships become stages upon which anima and animus dance, sometimes beautifully, sometimes destructively, and until they recognize this, they may confuse the archetypal with the personal, mistaking inner symbols for outer destiny. It is a dangerous, yet holy path. For what the empaths must ultimately realize is that their aura, this rare and luminous field, is not meant to make them saviors, but participants in the eternal dialogue between self and other, conscious and unconscious. Light and shadow, their gift is not to absorb endlessly, but to translate, to bring into awareness what is unconscious in the field. They are interpreters of silence, translators of the unseen. That is why they are drawn to art, to healing, to spiritual work, to any form where the invisible must be given voice. Yet, how do they survive the weight? This is where the symbol of the boundary enters. A chalice can only hold water if its walls are strong. The empaths must learn that their aura is not an open wound but a vessel. To carry others' pain is not to let it consume them, but to hold it long enough to see its shape to reflect it back, to allow it to find expression. Then they must release it. Without this act of release, they are devoured. I have seen many such souls break under the strain, consumed by depression, anxiety, or mysterious illnesses. Their bodies carry what their souls could not release. You see, the psyche will always find a way to express what is suppressed. If the empath does not learn to let go, their very flesh becomes the battleground for the collective's unacknowledged pain. And so, I tell you, the rare aura of the empath is not only gift, but initiation. It is a summons to the individuation journey, to become conscious of what they carry, to distinguish self from other, to embrace shadow without becoming it, to honor the anima and animus without being possessed by them. The empath path is nothing less than the path of the mystic psychologist. Whether or not they call it such, their life is a living alchemy, a process by which the raw material of collective suffering is transformed into light, insight, and love. But love not in the sentimental sense, love in the sense of eros, of connection, of the soul recognizing itself in the other. Imagine for a moment the empath as a flame in the darkness. Others come to this flame, drawn by its warmth. Some are healed by it. Some are terrified by it, because it illuminates what they would rather keep hidden. Some try to smother it, fearing its light. Yet the flame continues to burn, for it is fed not only by personal strength, but by the archetypal fire of the unconscious itself. But if the empath forgets their own center, if they allow others to consume the flame entirely, they are left in ashes. This is why I insist. The empath must learn the art of balance, to give, but not to give away their soul, to feel, but not to drown, to reflect, but not to become the mirror image of everyone they meet. The hidden truth is this: the aura of the empath is rare because it is the seed of transformation. Humanity needs such souls, for they remind us that we are not isolated, that we are connected in the depths. But humanity also crucifies such souls because they expose what we would rather deny. Every age has its prophets, its healers, its visionaries, and often they suffer for their gift. The empath is among them. Their aura is not a badge of comfort, but a calling, a weight, and ultimately, if embraced with consciousness, a crown. As I look into your faces, I sense that some of you know this already in your bones. You have lived it. You have felt the heaviness that no one could explain, the tears that seemed to rise from nowhere, the strange relief others felt in your presence while you grew weary. You wondered if you were cursed. But I tell you, you are not cursed. You are initiated. You are chosen by the unconscious itself to serve as witness. And to be a witness is no small thing, to see what others cannot see, to feel what others will not feel, to know what others deny. This is the essence of the empath's rare aura. And though it may burn you, it also reveals to you the sacred truth of existence, that in the end, we are not separate islands, but waves in one sea, flames in one fire, voices in one eternal song. If we are to understand more deeply the rare aura of the empath, we must enter the world of myth and dream, for these are the languages of the unconscious. And the empath is often fluent in them without knowing why. They dream not only their own story, but the story of humanity. Their sleep is not simply rest, but a stage upon which the dramas of the collective are played out. This is why their dreams are so often archetypal. They may see serpents winding around trees, floods engulfing villas, children abandoned at crossroads, or radiant figures offering gifts to the untrained mind. These dreams are strange. To the empaths, they feel personal, overwhelming, but I tell you, these dreams belong not only to you, they are voices of the collective unconscious, and you, by virtue of your open aura, have been chosen to carry them. Consider for a moment the myth of Cassandra, cursed to see the truth but never to be believed. Many empaths live a similar fate. They sense storms before they come, betrayals before they are revealed, illnesses before they are diagnosed. They speak it, but others dismiss them. Why? Because society fears those who mirror the unconscious too clearly. The empath's aura reveals the hidden, and most would rather keep it hidden. Yet, the myth tells us something deeper, that the role of the seer is never easy, but it is essential. Without such voices, the collective would stumble blindly into its own destruction. And so the empath, even when rejected, carries a function of survival for the species. The empath's aura is also bound to the archetype of the threshold. They are liminal beings, standing between worlds, the personal and the collective, the conscious and the unconscious, the living and the archetypal. In ancient cultures, such figures were the shamans, the oracles, the medicine women who walked at the edge of the tribe. They were feared and revered in equal measure. Today, society has lost its language for them, and so they are often pathologized, labeled as too sensitive, too fragile, too emotional. But if you look with archetypal eyes, you see the continuity. The empath is still the threshold keeper, still the one who bridges realms. Their aura is not merely rare, it is ancient. No, let me speak of possession. For if the empath does not become conscious, they risk being overtaken by the very forces they sense. Archetypes are not abstractions, they are living energies. And if they are not recognized, they take hold of the personality. The empath who feels everyone's pain may become possessed by the archetype of the martyr, sacrificing themselves endlessly, losing all individuality. Or they may be seized by the savior archetype, addicted to rescuing, unable to let others face their own shadows. This is not individuation, this is enslavement. The aura becomes heavy, darkened by energies that were never meant to be carried in perpetuity. This is why I insist. The empath must learn the art of differentiation, to feel without fusing, to love without losing, to sense without surrendering their own center. And what is this center? It is the self, the archetype of wholeness, the guiding principle of individuation. The empath's aura is porous, yes, but it is also drawn instinctively toward the self, for only in union with the self can they survive their openness. The self provides the axis, the still point around which all feelings may swirl without destroying them. The empath who finds the self becomes a lighthouse. Their aura shines not because it is unshielded, but because it is aligned. They no longer absorb blindly. They radiate consciously. They do not drown in the collective. They translate it into symbols, art, healing, wisdom. Their aura becomes not just rare, but purposeful, carrying the imprint of the eternal within the temporal. Let us descend further. Imagine the empath's aura as a river. At first it is wild, overflowing, flooding its banks with every storm. This is the young empath, the child who cries at the sadness of a stranger, who feels ill at a quarrel in the next room. They do not yet know where they end, and others begin. The river carries everything, but as they grow, if they enter the path of individuation, the river finds its course. Banks are formed, the water still flows, still nourishes, still carries immense power, but now it is guided. It irrigates fields instead of drowning them. It turns the wheel of mills, generating life. This is the matured empath, the one who has taken their rare aura and shaped it into a vessel of transformation. Their gift is no longer a burden, but a channel of meaning. Yet, let me warn again, the unconscious is cunning. It will test the empath through projections. People will idealize them, expecting endless compassion. Others will envy them, despising their sensitivity. Some will unconsciously attack them, seeking to crush what they cannot understand. The empath must endure all this without becoming bitter, without withdrawing into cynicism. Their task is to hold the tension of opposites, to remain open but not gullible, compassionate but not enslaved, radiant but not consumed by the gaze of others. This is alchemy of the highest order, and every empath who succeeds in it contributes not only to their own individuation, but to the evolution of humanity's consciousness. You might ask, why is such an aura rare if humanity so deeply needs it? The answer lies in fear. To be open to the unconscious is to risk madness, to risk being overwhelmed by forces greater than oneself. Most people instinctively shut the door. They prefer the comfort of ego, the narrow walls of persona, the illusion of separation. Only a few, often by fate, by trauma, or by calling, find themselves unable to close that door. They are thrust into openness, often unwillingly. They suffer for it, but if they survive, they become luminous. This is the paradox. The empath's aura is born of wound and of grace, of fracture and of wholeness, of suffering and of transcendence. It cannot be manufactured. It is forged in the crucible of life itself. And so I tell you, if you recognize yourself in these words, take them not as flattery, but as summons. To carry such an aura is to carry responsibility. You are called to awareness, to discipline, to the lifelong work of individuation. You cannot afford to live unconsciously, for the forces moving through you are too great. But if you embrace the path, if you honor the symbols, the dreams, the archetypes that speak through you, then your aura will not only reflect suffering, but radiate wisdom. You will become a bearer of light in a world drowning in shadows, not by denying darkness, but by showing how it can be integrated That is the hidden truth of the empath's rare aura. It is not to avoid shadow, but to transform it, to become alchemists of the soul, vessels through which the collective finds its healing. You must understand, the rare aura that belongs to the true empath is never meant to remain in its raw form. It is a beginning, not an end. Just as the alchemist begins with base matter and seeks to draw out the philosopher's stone, so too must the empath take this openness, this wound, and this radiance, and guide it through the process of transformation. Otherwise, the gift remains curse, the light remains uncontrolled fire, and the unconscious relentless, as the tides will exact its price if the gift is not integrated. Individuation is the answer. To individuate is to bring into harmony the fragments of one's psyche, to acknowledge shadow, anima, animus, and self, to become whole rather than fragmented. For the empath, Individuation take on a unique form because their openness to others is their doorway to the self. They must learn boundaries, not as walls, but as sacred vessels. They must recognize that their aura is rare, not because they were chosen to suffer endlessly, but because they were chosen to awaken. Every projection they absorb, every shadow they feel, is a summons to consciousness. It is the unconscious knocking at their door, saying, look, here is more of humanity's truth. Integrate it, and in doing so, help us all. But how is this done? Through the slow, deliberate work of self-reflection, of dream analysis, of facing the images that arise in the night. The empath's dreams are a gold mine, but only if they are listened to. A dream of drowning may not simply mean fear. It may mean you are holding emotions that do not belong to you. A dream of carrying a child through fire may be the soul's way of showing you that you are carrying collective trauma. The empath must learn to dialogue with these images, to write them down, to paint them, to give them form. For in form, the unconscious finds release. Without form, it festers, the aura becomes burdened, heavy, opaque, but with form, the aura shines, for it has fulfilled its function as bridge. The empath's journey is also one of power. But here lies another danger. Many empaths unconsciously use their aura to manipulate, to control, to draw others into dependency. It is subtle, often hidden, even from themselves, because they can feel another's need. They may fulfill it before it is asked, binding the other to them. Or they may use their sensitivity to anticipate reactions, to avoid conflict. But in doing so, they are not free. They become entangled in the very web they are meant to illuminate. Power misused by the empath is especially dangerous because it wears the mask of care. It looks like compassion, but it is bondage. Therefore, the highest calling of the empath is not simply to heal, but to liberate, to free others, not bind them, to shine light on their path, not to walk it for them, to offer presence, not possession. And so the empath must continually return to their center. They must ask, what is mine and what is not? what is being asked of me, and what belongs to another's journey. This discernment is not cold detachment, but sacred clarity. For if the empath confuses themselves with the Savior, they will burn out. But if they recognize themselves as witness, companion, and mirror, they will endure. Their aura will not collapse under the weight of the collective, but will glow as a reminder of what humanity can become. The crown of the empath is this: to embody conscious compassion, not sentimentality, not martyrdom, not saviorhood, but compassion born of awareness, compassion that says, I see you, I feel you, I acknowledge you, and I will not abandon you, but I will not erase myself for you either. This is the voice of the self speaking through the empath. It is a love that is firm, radiant, and eternal. And when the empath reaches this stage, their aura becomes unmistakable. It no longer flickers with confusion. It burns with steady flame. Others feel it and are changed, not because the empath has taken their pain, but because the empath has reflected their truth back to them in such a way that they can no longer deny it. Do you see the beauty of this? The empath's aura is rare, not only because it is porous, but because it can be transfigured. The empath is a crucible in which humanity's unconscious finds light, and when they accept this, when they cease to resist their gift, when they cease to drown in it, their life becomes myth. They live not as isolated egos, but as embodiments of the archetype of the healer, the mediator, the bridge. Their very presence becomes symbol. They walk into a room and without a word, others sense a possibility that wholeness is real, that the unconscious is not enemy but ally, that love is not weakness but the strongest force in existence. But let me be honest, few reach this stage. Many are broken by the burden, many retreat, becoming cynical, isolating themselves, calling their gift a curse. Others become addicted to rescuing, losing themselves in endless cycles of pain. And still others deny it altogether, numbing themselves with distractions. Yet for those who persevere, who endure the long night of confusion, who dare to face their own shadows, even as they carry those of others, the reward is beyond measure. They become luminous, they become whole, and their aura, once rare and fragile, becomes indestructible because it is rooted not in ego but in the eternal self. And so I say to you, if you find yourself among the empaths, do not despair, do not believe you are weak, do not believe you are cursed. Believe instead that you are summoned to consciousness, to individuation, to a path that is difficult but sacred. You will suffer, yes, but suffering is the crucible of transformation. You will be misunderstood, yes, but misunderstanding is the mark of those who carry truths too deep for common speech. You will be tempted to give yourself away entirely, yes, but your task is to stand firm, to hold the chalice of your aura steady, to let it shine without spilling its essence. The rare aura only true empaths carry is, in the end, humanity's reminder of what it means to be whole. It is a beacon of interconnectedness in an age of isolation. It is a vessel of shadow and light, wound and healing, burden and gift. It is rare because it demands everything: honesty, courage, discernment, and, above all, love. But if embraced, it becomes crown, it becomes radiance, it becomes the very presence of the self incarnate in human form. So I leave you with this: guard your aura, not with fear, but with reverence. Honor your dreams, for they speak not only for you, but for the world. Face your shadows, for they are the price of your light. Love deeply, but do not lose yourself, and remember always, you are not alone. You are part of a greater whole, and your rare aura is the proof of it. Carry it with dignity, with courage, with humility, for in you lives a hidden truth that the world desperately needs, that to feel deeply is not weakness, but the beginning of wisdom